Hello, welcome to Oakville Matters. If there's something that matters more than protecting yourself from fraud, I'm having trouble thinking of it right now. And I heard a story about a horrible fraud where a senior got defrauded out of home and money and everything by being taken by horrible scamsters. And so this show is dedicated to arming you against being a victim of fraud, and we've got 3 experts who I think can protect you across the range. And I'm going to start with Sarah Rudall on my immediate left here, and she's the Detective Constable. Constable Nadine Clarke is with the Regional Community Mobilization Unit, and I'll explain in a second what that is. And we also have Detective Constable Mark Murray, and I joked with them that in my background we abbreviate titles, and I was going to call the detective constables detectives, and they said thanks for the promotion. So then I got afraid, so now I'm stressing that, you know, they probably will be detectives though. What Mark does is, as he explained to me, is deal with he called it more immediate forms of fraud, or mechanical or card forms of fraud. And I immediately imagined the business people in downtown Oakville who had quite the episode a few years ago of people scamming their machines and stealing credit card numbers by putting in devices and things. And I was myself once the victim of a card fraud like that. Not in Oakville. I was in Scarborough at a gas station, and I bought some gasoline at an Esso gas station, not a off the path, a mainline place. And within 30 minutes, the credit card company was on the cell phone to me saying, "Did you just spend $3,000 on such and so?" 50 miles away from where I had just bought some gasoline with this card. And I said, well, obviously not. And so I was protected. If you call having your card immediately canceled, protection. Fortunately, I was on my way home, so it wasn't a disaster. But Mark, expand for us this sector of anti-fraud that you work in.
Well, we do deal with things such as point of sale terminal tampering, but that's on the decline. We're not seeing a lot of that anymore. That was something that was very prevalent, I'd say 7 or 8 years ago. It's a little bit too complex now. You actually have to go in the store and find a way to take their point of sale terminal and replace it with your own. It's a high likelihood of getting caught or being seen or being caught on tape. So we're seeing a major decline in that. Same with ATM tampering. We're not seeing a lot of it because it's just the ATM machines now are built more robust. They're better suited so that they can't add these cameras and magnetic strip readers to these machines. So I would say that that's not something prevalent that we would need to worry about going forward. The things that we're seeing now are more of the scams, the computer and phone scams, where they can be in another country and perpetrate these frauds. That's what's really hitting us right now.
So they're going to call me and ask me for my credit card number somehow? Well,
they're going to call you and say that they're the CRA and that they're going to arrest you immediately if you don't pay your outstanding tax bill.
I had that call last night.
We go into the community and do presentations all the time, and every single person in the room has had one of those calls. But if they get 1 out of 100, they're getting money 1 out of 100 times, right? And it's a lucrative business that they're doing. So.
Oh, wow. I can't believe that anybody, I just hang up. But they do sound very threatening. I will grant they're very good actors. But I used to direct actors, so I don't know. I'm like.
Well, we find that a lot of the victims, like Sarah said earlier, are the elderly, but especially new to Canada, because these people come from countries where maybe their governments or their police services didn't have the integrity that ours does, that the ones here in Canada have. So they believe it. They think, okay, I'm in trouble with the government here, I'm in trouble with the police. If this was back home, I would pay this because I would have to, so they pay it here.
Wow. So Sarah, maybe you can frame the larger discussion that we're having here today about fraud. And Nadine, I can't wait to talk about the Purple Book. Sarah.
Yeah, so last month was Fraud Prevention Month. It's in Canada, so it's a federally recognized event that happens every March. And when we were trying to decide who we needed to focus on, we decided that the three probably most vulnerable groups that we see being targeted in our region and probably throughout Canada. Seniors, very vulnerable. Newcomers to Canada, as Mark has already highlighted, and local businesses we've found. So the focus of our presentations, especially last month, and they will continue through the rest of the year as well, our community presentations have been these three groups. There's many scams out there, and people are ripe to being victimized. So we kind of tailor our presentations to these three groups to try and educate them of all the current scams that are going on. So, I mean, really, the tagline for us is recognize, reject, and report these different types of scams. And that's basically our aim now, is to highlight the ways that these scams are getting out there, how people are getting in touch with people in our region, because there's through the telephone, there's mail, not so much in person anymore. It's really mass marketing fraud that we're seeing, and it's through telephone, email, letters. And so this is how people are being victimized.
So in the case that happened to me just last night, where I hung up on the recorded announcement with the threatening voice, should I have called somebody about that? Should I have done more than just hang up?
Okay,
so I did the reject. I did the recognize and reject.
Yeah.
But I didn't do the report.
Yeah. So what we're asking people to do is, this is widespread, the CRA scam right now. You know, they know it's tax time. They know that people are thinking about taxes. And so, yeah, they're really hammering people with this CRA scam. But what we say is, if you haven't lost money, don't call us, we won't take a report, but we do refer people to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, and we hope that they will phone the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre and report this. One of their functions is to disrupt this type of fraud, and for example, if a telephone number comes up, we would ask you to call the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre and report the telephone number that these people are using. One of the things the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre does is contact the suppliers of these phone numbers, and they'll just cut the phone lines off. We know that they're going to move on and use another one, but if we can do what we can to disrupt them, then we hope that people will do that.
I could support that form of harassment 24 hours a day. So Nadine, I said I was going to explain community mobilization. My favorite theme is that you can only have a safe a community as you're willing to work together with each other, all the members of the community to create. The police are the people, and the people are the police, as Sir Robert Peel said, more than 100 years ago, back in the early 1800s. And that's certainly the watchword of our police service. Nadine, you work with seniors mostly?
Yeah, so my role is the older adult support officer, and I work with the older adults in the community and any community partners that also work with older adults. But part of my role is to go out and educate seniors, and the #1 topic that I go out and do is how not to become a victim of a fraud and scam. I yearly probably give around 80 presentations a year, and what I tell them is I would rather come give this education piece and we never do a fraud investigation again, because unfortunately they are at risk. Yeah.
So mobilization, I don't know if we've named it perfectly or not, but the Community Mobilization Unit is called that because we're trying to make sure that everybody understands that the community has an active role to play in keeping us Canada's safest community. And when the old saying, if you see something, say something, is involved here. What is the #1 most? I'm trying to come up with the words for the fraud that works that seniors are the most susceptible to. That's, I think, the safe way to ask my question.
The #1, based on the Canadian anti-fraud statistics, is the dating and romance scam. It has the least amount of complainants, but the highest amount of money lost. We just got the stats. It's in 2017, it's over $8 million lost in Canada to that age population.
Now, do they report less because they're embarrassed more?
Yes, but also too, once they are involved in that relationship with a scammer, they tend to give more money. Whereas if you're a victim of a lottery scam, you might lose a couple $100s, but then you don't get the money. Whereas the scammers will involve emotion and urgency and all that kind of stuff. They built this relationship with the senior, so you're more invested. So the victimization, and sometimes they don't even recognize that they're a victim until a lot of the times they've lost a substantial amount of money.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so the dating and romance scam is the #1 scam for seniors, because a lot of the times they're lonely. You know, everybody wants to feel loved, and they, like I said, they build this relationship with them.
So what can we do to reduce the susceptibility of this population?
So what we're trying to do is really target the isolated seniors. You know, the active seniors that go to the senior centers, that, you know, have family and go out, they will have somebody to ask the question, is this, you know, is this okay? So we are really trying to target the isolated seniors. We did work with our corporate communications and come up with a trifold flyer that has all the tips, and working with the region and how to distribute this to those isolated seniors. So,
and I'm getting a hint that I should build more senior centers.
A lot of the times it's mobility, or, you know, funds or those kind of things. So, you know, you have your active seniors, and a lot of times they are protected. It is unfortunately those isolated seniors that are very vulnerable.
Wow. So I'm fascinated by how much money gets lost this way. It boggles my mind, actually. What's the biggest shock that you've seen in your field, Mark?
In my field? Just a point to what they were saying before. The one thing about the Halton region is that it's great in the way that we hardly ever arrest anyone perpetrating these scams in the Halton region, right? The offenders don't live here, which is great, but the community is such a target-rich environment because it is an affluent community, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of victims here, but that also entails another problem, whereas every investigation that we do in frauds, we end up out of Halton. We have to go somewhere else, whether it be Toronto or, you know, Niagara Way, or completely out of the country. But that is the positive and negative thing of the Halton region. The biggest thing that shocked me in my side of things, I would say, is the amount of account takeovers that happen at banks, where people can walk in with synthetic identification, like counterfeit identity documents is what we call them, and take money out of somebody's account when they're not there, pretending to be them. It happens at an alarming rate, and we've spoken to some of the banks and talked to them about what we think they could do to safeguard against this. Yet they tell us they can't, because what we think is one of the simple things is to put a picture of each client on the account screen, so that when somebody comes in and they don't match the picture, they don't get any money. But I'm being told that it's legislated that they're not allowed to keep these pictures on file. Just nobody can tell me where it's legislated.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing. You know, this episode of Oakville Matters is meant to do what we used to do, and the need to do it has diminished. Many of you will know the now retired Constable Draper. So we once had a public meeting of like 400 homeowners who were shocked that they couldn't leave their doors unlocked. And Carla was so good at explaining to them in the most inoffensive way that, you know, if you put a sign up that says "kick me," there are people who will kick you, and if you leave your door unlocked, there are people who will rob you. And they don't live here; they come here because you leave your door open. It's like leaving food out and being surprised if vermin come. So I'm shocked by the bank story. I really am. I think maybe our councils, the regional council and the local councils, might be able to, at the very least, pass resolutions urging the government to smarten up on that. And I'm going to task our legal department to help track down where this alleged law is, because I'm very skeptical that there's such a law. I sense you're skeptical too.
Well, yeah, a little bit.
Well, you know, when people don't want to do something, they're almost like the fraudsters. When they don't want to do something, they're very inventive with their excuses. So, in Nadine, in the work that you do, do you do more than the warning part, or is the investigating part left with others?
Yeah, so I could start an investigation. So if I get called to go and speak with a senior, maybe a service provider has concerns about something, I could go out and take the initial report, but my main job would be to implement services so that this person doesn't remain isolated or continue to be a victim. I call it like the Band-Aid, and stop the bleeding. So I put the Band-Aid on, stop the bleeding, hand over the information for the investigators to then dive into the investigation to see if there's charges.
Sarah, what are the emerging scams, if there are any? I mean, what should we be? So there's an education program underway to warn people about the CRA scam and the Lonely Hearts scam. Is there something we can tell people to be on the lookout for that isn't widely known yet? Is there an emerging problem?
I think there's one that has been going on recently regarding somebody will receive a phone call on their landline, and the person on the other end is telling them, this is somebody from the bank, so they may reference any bank, and say, have you had a transaction on your credit card, say made in China at 3 a.m. in the morning? And then they'll say, no, of course not. I was asleep at that time and I certainly wasn't in China. And they'll say, okay, so just go and pop and get your credit card, and then we're going to take your details and just call the number on the back of your credit card. So hang up with me and then immediately call the number on the back of your credit card. And so the person will have, while these people are on the line, they will have gone and got their credit card, have their credit card there, they're all ready to go. So they say, okay, bye-bye. So they'll hang up, and immediately they'll pick the phone up, and then they'll dial the number, and they'll think they're talking to a representative from their own bank, but because the people who called them initially never hung up, the line is still connected. So these people are now handing over their personal information to a fraudster, not a legitimate member of bank staff on the other end. So I think this is one that is current at the moment.
I'm going to cancel my landline.
Yes, there's lots of classic scams that just go on and on and on, maybe with slight tweaks or variations, because the classic scams work. And I think what we're struggling with our seniors is that a lot of the information that we put out is online. We have our Halton Police website, and the fraud unit has their own sort of page on there with lots of information. We utilize our Twitter handle at Halton Police now as well. But a lot of the seniors, when we go and speak to them, they say, well, we're not online. We don't receive emails from you. We don't use your website. We're not on Twitter. We don't even know what Twitter is. So the real challenge for us is being able to access these people and get that information out to them.
And the more isolated they are, the more difficult. Oh my God.
And of course, they still have landlines because they don't have cell phones. They're not into that. They're still using the old school landline system. And so that's why they're just ripe to be victimized.
Wow. I usually am full of ideas when I hear a problem, and I'm out. That's like I sense you are too.
Yeah, but I mean, if we could see more seniors maybe, doing courses that help them in their computer literacy, so they, a gateway will then open for them, and they'll be able to access all this good information from us. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has ideas to help us access the seniors, they'd be very welcome.
We're going to need some kind of a adopt your local isolated senior program where community-minded people understand that they might be the only lifeline to save these people. And there's actually a good social reason to do that, because if they do become a victim, then society is going to be carrying that burden. So, wow.
We always say to the seniors when we go to the presentations, we always take a whole load of handouts with us, and we always say to them, once you've finished with them, once you've read them, please hand them on to other people, maybe in the community that you live in, who don't have access to these resources. So, spread the word. you know, share your resources with them.
How do we get them to them? You know, there's Nadine, I promised that we would talk about the Purple Book, and we have a picture of it. Do you want to describe it?
When I've been in this role for 4.5 years, and the Anti-Fraud Center has a book called The Little Black Book of Scams, which was black, but now it's purple. They just redid it and it's purple. So now it's the Little Black Book that's purple.
So now, is the Purple Little Black Book a good source? Oh,
yes, and it's you can get it in hard copy for free, and or you can download it off the internet, or just view it on the internet in a PDF. But it has all of the scams. It has the preventative stuff. It has, you know, who to report to, those kind of things. So if you think, you know, you got a phone call, or you got a letter, or you got an email, and maybe is it a scam, you can check that Little Black Book. Another thing that I do tell seniors, for ones that do use the internet, is Google. You can put a phone number into Google, you can put a name into Google, you can put a business name into Google, and what will pop up a lot of the times is, this is a fraudster calling, do not answer, do not give your information. So I do tell them to be their own investigators in that regards.
So there's good points for Google. Now, we talked about seniors, we talked about newcomers a little bit. Have we covered, I don't think we've covered the businesses' vulnerability to scams. What's the story there? Because we think of businesses as being, you know, too smart to fall for a scam. What's the real story?
Well, an ongoing problem in fraud is identity theft, and we are finding that the way that these fraudsters, scammers, whatever you want to call them, the way they get access to businesses now is through phishing emails. So, and these are really common, it's very easy for them to do, they just send out a bunch of them, and that's how they're getting access. So one particular scam that we're seeing now that is you know, defrauding people of thousands of dollars is what we're calling the CEO scam. And so they'll get access to a company's email network by sending out one of these phishing emails. So it will look like a legitimate email, so it comes from they make it look as if it comes from a bank or Canada Post or something like that, and there will be a link in it, and they will ask the person who receives the email to click on the link. Once they've done that, they basically have access to your computer, access to your email server, and then they'll do something called what is called spear phishing. So they are targeting in that company the person who maybe deals with billing or paying the bills. So then they find out who is the CEO of the company, and they will send out a fake email from the CEO to this person who deals with billing, and they'll instruct them, this is an urgent request, you need to wire $300,000 or maybe more, usually to somewhere outside of Canada. So we've seen them going to you know, China, Holland, all over the place. And so this person thinks that it's a genuine request from the CEO or the chief financial officer or something like that. And then they will send that wire transfer off. And then only later will they verify it and find out that it's a fraud. So this is a big problem, and it's affecting a lot of businesses.
So no wonder they call it spear phishing, because if you're the victim of that, boy, will you feel like you've just been speared through the chest.
Yeah.
My God. So is that covered in the Purple Little Black Book of Little Black Book of Scams? I
believe it is, yes.
So what else is happening to businesses that you're worried about?
Well, maybe Mark can speak to the currency.
Two problems going on right now with local businesses would be counterfeit currency, seeing counterfeit $100 bills. Ever since Canada switched to the polymer bill away from the paper, things have been way better, way more secure. But lately, people are starting to catch up to that polymer technology, and we're starting to see counterfeits out there. They're very bad counterfeits. The ink falls off the plastic or the polymer right away, but people are still passing them. The secondary thing for businesses is manipulation of point-of-sale terminals, where people are overriding the point-of-sale terminal and punching in a credit card number manually rather than using chip and PIN, and they're using stolen credit card data to make purchases. These require multiple people, because what will happen is 3 people will go into the store. We had one 2 weeks ago at a Vision store. 3 guys go in. One says he wants to buy $1,500 worth of sunglasses. While he's manipulating the terminal, another one of the gentlemen says, "Can I see some glasses over here?" Takes the person away so they don't see the manipulation of the terminal, and they don't find out until a month later that it was a stolen credit card data that was used, and then that business is on the hook for that money because it was a manipulation of the point of sale terminal, not chip and pin technology.
I didn't even know you could override that.
Every single point of sale terminal has an access password to go into the override mode. Most businesses don't change that PIN from when they initially get the system, and these people know that. They know what the generic PIN is for these point of sale terminals, so they go in, they punch it in, if it works, great, and then they make a couple of buys and they leave.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you get a point of sale terminal, and I'm a businessman, I get one of these things, and they tell me this is the default PIN.
Yes.
And I don't change it. Wow.
But then as the business owner, you're on the hook for that financial loss.
Wow. So, I mean, we should almost put somebody on full-time duty going around to every business and saying, change your PIN or else.
It would help a lot, but I mean, you know what it's like. Most people, when they get a new system or a new store set up and they have 3 or 4 terminals, they don't even think about that, right? They just, okay, it's working, let's go. They don't think about the authorization code and changing it.
Wow, wow. What else is happening at businesses? I mean, that's major. You blew my mind with that one.
I will say, when you spoke earlier about the point of sale terminal tampering, where they put their own mechanisms inside to take magnetic strip data and things like that, we do have a program in Halton. It's called the Halton Police Hologram Program. We have a little hologram that we put on the point of sale terminal where you would open it up to tamper with it, and it's a self-destructing sticker. So if you get in the morning and you look at your point of sale terminal and the sticker's gone, or it's voided itself, something's wrong with that point of sale terminal and you need to change it over.
And how much do we charge for this very valuable service?
It's free for anyone who wants it.
I can't believe, and does everybody take it up? No.
No.
No. So you shake your head sometimes when you go home, I bet.
I was told, I don't know if I should say this, but I was told at one business, one rather large business, that it was intimidating to have the police logo on the point of sale terminal, so they didn't want it.
Oh my God. Well, there you have it, folks. You now know how to protect yourself, and you now know that some people are choosing not to protect themselves. And of course, the danger of that is they attract fraud, and they attract crime, and we're trying to have a crime-free, or at any rate, we're trying to keep Canada's safest community here. So whenever you see somebody practicing unsafe behavior, say something to them. And join us next time on Oakville Matters.